Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rucha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Ezra, the 6th chapter. As you can see in the subheading, Darius finds Cyrus's decree. Now in the 5th chapter, just as a brief recap, we went through the governors, and the let's just say the officials on the other side of the river. So that should be on the side where, today they would call like the Levant or wherever we were building the temple. And they pretty much asked of us, Zerubbabel, Jeshua, and the elders, by whose permission we were allowed to do this. And based on our response, they went to Darius to inquire, to say, hey, these guys are saying that, Cyrus gave them permission to do this. Could we just check? We want to make sure this is the case. So no harm comes to the king, in terms of his provinces. And so search was made, and it was found out that, yes, indeed, this is the case. So continuing in Ezra chapter 6, verse 1. Then Darius the king made a decree, and search was made in the house of the rolls, where the treasuries or the treasures were laid up in Babylon. And this is something that, for example, we have the book of Kings, the book of Chronicles, and there were many other books, right, that had more details about the various kings and so on. But we don't really have access to them today, which is okay. We have what we need. However, something like the book of Chronicles is exactly that, right? Like a record of history, of accounts of things that took place. And therefore, that is an example, right, of these kind of records that you could go back to when maybe there was an inquiry that needed to be made based on some event that happened, maybe some decree that was made. Like today, you could go through like the memos of the certain national security directives or certain executive orders that were passed in the past, and all of those kinds of things. So here, when they searched the House of Scrolls, right, similar to what Xerxes had done concerning Mordecai and the things he did in favor of the king, right, they had records. Long story short, they had records that they could go back to verify certain things. So that's what was done here. Verse 2, and there was found at Achmetha in the palace, that is in the province of the Medes, a roll, and therein was a record thus written. And I mean, Babylon, the province of the Medes, the key word here is province, right? So it lets you know that this area was still under jurisdiction of as a whole, the Achaemenid Empire. Verse 3, in the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem, that the house be builded, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid, the height thereof 60 cubits, which a score is 20, so 60 is 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 60 cubits, with 3 rows of great stones and a row of new timber, and let the expenses be given out of the king's house. And also let the golden and silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took forth out of the temple, which is at Jerusalem, right? When the Babylonians besieged Jerusalem, of course they would take that. When Antiochus Epiphanes pillaged the temple and all of that, what do you think they took? Because to them, it didn't mean the same thing as it meant to us. To us, these were holy vessels. These were, a part of our service to Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. To these other nations, it was a treasure house. Wow, you go into a temple and when you watch movies like Indiana Jones and they go and find these ancient ruins, and typically they'll go into some temple or some ziggurat or something like that, and they'll see all these golden chains and bracelets and cups and vessels. To them, it's just riches, it's booty, it's spoil, plunder, right? So of course, Nebuchadnezzar, when they had besieged us and they went into the temple, they saw all of that gold. They said, yeah, we're going to take that. They didn't regard it as these are holy vessels or anything of that sort. Nevertheless, in Cyrus's decree, he says here, yeah, all those vessels that Nebuchadnezzar took, take them back. Right? It says, and brought into Babylon, be restored. And brought again onto the temple, which is at Jerusalem, everyone to his place, and placed them in the house of God. Now therefore, Tatnai, governor beyond the river, Shethar-boznai, and your companions, the Arphasachites, which are beyond the river, be ye far from thence. Meaning, step back, fall back. Don't interrupt this building, because we've made a search in the records and we found that indeed Cyrus did make this decree. Now, when you actually look up the term here, Arphasachites, there's some speculation here, right? It tells you it's of foreign origin. But there's some speculation here as to who or what it could mean. A couple of possible definitions for the actual term or the name as causers of division, or I will divide the deceivers. But here they seem to be leaning towards this term being used as to refer to like it says here, an unknown official, or perhaps an office or an official. Okay, so less so of maybe a particular nation of people, and more so of a collection of people that have been categorized by some position that they're in, right? Like today, you could say something like politicians, right? If you say this guy's a politician or these politicians, that's not a nation of people, right? Because you can have Chinese and Japanese and Edomites. You can have all of these people as politicians of a certain nation, right? But it's just a term, a political term, or a certain, position that they hold. So that could probably be the case here for these Arphasachites. Anyway, verse 7, let the work of this house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of God in his place. And the reason this was the case is because the Heavenly Father had put the Spirit upon these kings to give the commandment, the decree for this to happen. And in fact, this was actually also prophesied or also mentioned, which it was revealed to Daniel by the angel, okay, in Daniel the 9th chapter. Verse 8, moreover, I will make a decree what ye shall do to the elders of the Jews for the building of this house of God, that of the king's goods, even of the tribute beyond the river, forthwith expenses be given unto these men, that they be not hindered. So in addition to you leaving them alone, what I want you to do is the tribute that comes from that side, okay, the nations that are on that side, so Syria and Israel and Judea, Samaria, and all of these provinces over there, all the tribute that comes over there, because keep in mind, when you had these empires, they were broken up on a sub-level where you had different regions, different provinces, satraps, and all of that, right? And so with each different region, you would have some governor or someone to oversee it. Like the Romans had consuls, right? And you had also what nation was this? I think the Greeks, they called them tyrants, okay, which they had set up over their different regions to report up, okay? So you could imagine that these individuals, this Tatnai and Shethar-boznai and all of them, they would be like sort of in that position to be able to maybe oversee what's going on around that region. So Darius is telling them, hey, all the tribute that comes from that tribute, you're going to take some and you're going to give it to these Jews so that they can continue building, and they don't have to be hindered or worry about finances. Verse 9, and that which they have need of, both young bullocks and rams and lambs, for the burnt offerings of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the appointment of the priests which are at Jerusalem, let it be given them daily or day by day without fail. So now you're also to provide them with all of these resources that they need in order to carry on with not only the building, but also, or really I should say, they should carry on with the ordinances or the sacrifices that they need to do. Verse 10, that they may offer sacrifices of sweet savors unto the God of heaven, and pray for the life of the king and of his sons. See, so they acknowledged, right? Even here, Darius, which this is the Persian, right? Acknowledged the God of the Jews being the God of heaven. Okay. Verse 11, it says here, pray for the life of the king and his sons. Now, if we actually look up Darius, I know one of his sons was Xerxes, right? Ahasuerus in the book of Esther. Let's look up here Darius, as he's known as the Great, Darius. So you can see he has his spouse, women, his parents, and then you have his children. See, you have Xerxes the first, which is the individual that actually reigns after him. You have Arsamenes, Gorbrias, Masistis, Achaemenes, and some more. So he had a good amount of children. But also, if you pay attention here, you can see his grandchildren. You had Artaxerxes the first, and he's going to come up as we continue reading here. So going back to the book of Ezra, chapter 6, verse 11. Also I have made a decree that whosoever shall alter this word, let timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged thereon, and let his house be made a dunghill for this. So that right there is letting you know, pretty much it's going to be a crime if anybody tries to alter this decree to allow the Israelites, the Jews in particular at this time, to rebuild or to hinder the process of them sacrificing to their God or anything of that sort. Verse 12, and the God that hath caused his name to dwell there, destroy all kings and people that shall put to their hand to alter and to destroy this house of God, which is at Jerusalem. I, Darius, have made a decree, let it be done with speed. Verse 13, then Tatnai, governor on this side the river, Shethar-boznai, and their companions, according to that which Darius the king had sent, so did they speedily. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. And they builded and finished it, according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. Now keep in mind, what we're reading of here in Ezra is a record of the things that happened. So, though right now we're reading about a particular time period, assuming that whoever is writing this or wherever this record is might be far ahead, right? So let's say, for example, at the time of the writing of what we're reading here, the temple had already been built and the walls had already been built. In that case, it would make sense, right? Because at this point in time, we've only really heard about the commandment from Cyrus and Darius. Artaxerxes, he hasn't even come into power yet. I don't even know if he was born at this time yet, right? So, but we know that he is the grandson of Darius. And in the future, he would also give a commandment to allow Nehemiah to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls. Okay. So anyway, that commandment, right, when you even go to the book of Daniel, chapter 9, should be around the 26th or 27th verse. No, not 27. 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, you hear that, even in troublous times, because Jerusalem is not just the temple. All right, Jerusalem is the temple, the city, the walls, all of that encompasses it. That's why it mentions here the wall. So that commandment obviously was first from the Most High, but in the physical manifestation, it was given by Cyrus, reaffirmed by Darius, and completed by Artaxerxes. And when we get to the book of Nehemiah, we get more details about this. So, verse 15, and this house was finished on the 3rd day of the month Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king. And the children of Israel, and if we take a look at Darius, let's see what they tell us about his reign. So they say here he began to reign in 522 BC. And so the 6th year should put us 2 years into the future would be 520. 2 years more would be 518. And 2 years more will be right around 516. And when you look into some historical accounts, they place the completion of the second temple right around 517/516 BC. So that's right around in line with what we're reading here. Verse 16, and the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the children of the captivity kept the dedication of this house of God with joy. So far, on a high level, you can see that when you read like the book of Daniel, for example, and the book of Ezekiel, this is really centered around the time of the Babylonian Empire, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, okay? And that also encapsulates, I'd say Habakkuk, and also, what's this, Bel and the Dragon. And then when you read more, like the book of Ezra, certain parts of it, as you keep on going in, we start to shift more into now the reign of the Persians. And you can sort of hear it in the context, right? The names of the rulers at this time. So this sort of helps you build some context as to the time period where these different, these various prophets or events or books that we're reading took place, which can be helpful as you're reading it. So, it doesn't sound abstract, right? You're just reading verses in some book, and no, it sounds more realistic because these events actually happened at a period in time in history. Verse 17. Well, let me start at 16 again. And the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the children of the captivity kept the dedication of this house of God with joy, and offered at the dedication of this house of God 100 bullocks, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and a sin offering for all Israel, 12 he-goats according to the number of the tribes of Israel. And they set the priests in their divisions, and the Levites in their courses, for the service of God, which is at Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moses. So when you read in the Torah, there is a separation of the Levites, right? You had different families, and the different families had different roles to play, right? i.e. their courses. And so each family, would be set in their appropriate courses. They would handle different parts of the service of the Lord, i.e. the temple. Some would be taking care of the sacrifices. Some would be taking care of the incense. Some would be taking care of, the utensils, the guarding, the porters, all of these things. Verse 19, the Passover observed. And the children of the captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day of the first month. For the priests and the Levites were purified together. All of them were pure, and killed the Passover for all the children of the captivity, and for their brethren, the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel which were come again out of captivity, and all such as had separated themselves unto them from the filthiness of the heathen of the land, to seek the Lord Yahweh, power of Israel, did eat, and kept the feast of unleavened bread, i.e. the Passover, 7 days with joy. And I believe Leviticus 23 goes into that if you want to know more about that. Continuing, for the Lord Yahweh had made them joyful, and turned the heart of the king of Assyria unto them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel. Now, I mentioned this as well when we read this account in the book of First Ezra, that here it mentions the king of Assyria. And we know that, at least now we know that the actual kings that gave the decree for us to go and build the house, whether it was Cyrus and then Darius, for example, these were not Assyrians, right? These were Persians. But, you know, one possibility is that when the Persians took over, right? Let's put it like this. When the Persians took over, they took over the Babylonian Empire. They assimilated it. They didn't destroy it. They assimilated it. They just eliminated the king, which was the last king or king regent at the time was Belshazzar. So they eliminated him and they just came up in there as new management, new rulers. Now, during the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the ruling class were Assyrians, right? Because Nebuchadnezzar was an Assyrian. His father Nabopolassar was an Assyrian. So the ruling class of the Neo-Babylonian Empire were Assyrians, though the whole empire were not just Assyrians. You had different nations, like a melting pot of various nations in there. But the ruling class were Assyrians. So, you know, you can sort of see from the perspective of maybe the Israelites at the time, or whoever is writing this book here, the book of Ezra, that is, that in that perspective, the ruler at the time, whether Cyrus or Darius or whatnot, would be considered, for example, like it says here, king of Assyria, because not only does he have reign over Assyria, because they've overtaken that region right now, but also the original ruling class were Assyrians, and now they have a new king or a new ruler over them. Okay, so all in all, the point being, when we are reading this history now, we have more context, right, on a secular level than maybe the Israelites at the time. So in their minds, they're like, oh yeah, this was maybe, say, for example, king of Assyria, right? And so, you know, that could be one possible explanation as to why it says king of Assyria here. Or maybe the blue letter might have typed or made a typo. I mean, all in all, it's not that big of a deal to where, you know, you lose sleep over it. All right, because we know who these kings actually were. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the book of Ezra, the 6th chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.